This is Ryan Abraham, Chris Trevino, USCFootball.com. Instant analysis from Tuesday morning's practice of Utah week. I'm not Jack Smith. You've been used to him doing this. Those dulcet tones, it's kind of ironic. He gets laryngitis, like the best voice around. He gets laryngitis. So we're going to give Jack hopefully the week off, and then we'll rest his voice, and he'll be back next week. But Chris and I were both out there at practice checking out what was going on, talking to Lincoln Riley, talking to the players to get a feel going into this Utah game. Obviously, the one you've been circling, Chris, from the beginning of the season. Maybe you lose a little luster because the loss to UCLA, but it's a big game for this team.
Yeah, maybe just a little bit of luster. You, me, everyone has been circling this game as the big one for USC. We're going to learn a lot about this team. They've already had one really hard road contest up in Oregon State, and they passed that one, just passed it. But this is another one where, these people believe that the Pac-12 championship is going to run, obviously, through Utah. Well, maybe a little bit closer to LA with UCLA up there, but Utah is the big one. Everyone wants to see, okay, this is what USC is about. They're 6-0. Can they actually be a college football playoff contender? Can they go into Salt Lake City and walk out of that hostile road environment where they've only lost 2 games in the last 4 years up there in Salt Lake City, one being a COVID year, which we're going to talk about, which USC's last win. But yeah, this is the big one. Prepping for that noise, prepping for Cameron Rising in that offense, and a really good defense, so it should be a fun one.
It definitely should be fun. A lot of the talk, a lot of questions today were about that environment. I got to talk to Travis Dye a little bit, but Lincoln Riley, he talked about it on Trojans Live last night. Didn't seem to be diving in a lot. He's just saying it's going to be a fun environment. But we saw this USC offense struggle against Oregon State, and that was their worst offensive performance. I actually asked Dye about that. He said some of the veterans are working with the younger guys, just so going in there that it's not going to be that bad, but it's going to be hard to hear yourself think. But a lot of talk about what this environment's going to be, because it's going to be really loud. The muss is going to be going crazy, and if we see this USC offense sputter like they did against Oregon State, they're probably going to have a hard time winning.
And on the flip side, the defense seems to be a side of the ball that loves playing in sort of that environment. They kind of wash it over them and embrace that. But obviously the offense is what's key here, as you mentioned, that Caleb Williams and that offense, they really struggled to get going. So even if USC can be 50% better of what they showed in Oregon, and at that defense comes to play out there in Salt Lake City, you have to feel like USC has a pretty good chance. But we asked Jordan Addison about it, are you guys doing anything differently in terms of prepping for the crowd noise? He said, no, just kind of got the stereos out. They're bringing the stereos out, like typical. But I was wondering if they were going to bring out bigger stereos, or they're going to crank up the volume even louder, because this is going to be a full stadium. Ryan, this is not going to be Corvallis. This will not be half a stadium. This is going to be a jumping environment. So, we'll probably ask Caleb Williams about that tomorrow and his take on preparing for that environment and that loudness. But we I felt like we saw them handle that okay. In terms of how loud it is in communication, but just the offense was out of sync in terms of passing and outside of Travis Dye running the ball. So I think the offensive linemen are going to be okay. They seem to handle that first test well in Corvallis. So yeah, just getting used to and ready for that environment is going to be the biggest story and probably the biggest X factor for this team going into Saturday. Yeah,
one of the more unique aspects of this team, because of the way it was built, Travis Dye's played in Utah a couple of times. We asked Raylan Goforth about playing there. He played, USC won in 2020, but there were no fans, so there really wasn't the same kind of environment. But he said he was talking to Eric Gentry, who played there last year. So it's funny, you can get a different perspective from some of the different players on the team, because they might have played at Utah or in this kind of environment before.
Right, and as you mentioned, Raylan was part of that team that beat Utah in 2020, but that's such a hard game to count. Utah was off, multiple game misses for COVID and such, so it wasn't really a true kind of road win. It's a weird fluke year, but outside of that, they've only lost one true home game in the last 4 years to Washington, 21-7. Washington then ranked number 10 in the country, so Rice Eccles, super tough place to play. We've been there multiple times. It gets loud down there. I've been on the field, can barely hear yourself think, and I was just taking photos, so I can't even imagine trying to make a big play happen or make a third down happen. So obviously these guys are going to need to be prepared. They got a little taste of it in Corvallis, but this is going to be a big step up from that.
Jack always asks you about the weather. It's kind of cool now. I'm in shorts and a T-shirt where you're kind of bundled up. I don't know what the weather's going to be like in Utah. Maybe a little cooler too. Maybe this is preparing. What's really cool is to see guys like Nick Figueroa, Tuli Tuipulotu just getting after the quarterback. USC's leading the nation in sacks. Lincoln Riley was asked about that today. I know you saw Nick Figueroa maybe playing a different spot, but this pass rush I think is going to be really important, especially with a guy that's as elusive as Cam Rising.
Right, Cameron Rising, very mobile quarterback, and this is the third straight mobile quarterback USC's defense has faced in consecutive weeks, so they're well versed in the mobility of QBs. And Cameron Rising, Raylan Goforth said, what stands out about him running the ball is that he carries the ball like a running back. He has an impressive stiff arm, so he can get up and down the field. So you got to be watch out for that Cameron Rising stiff arm. But in terms of getting to the pass rusher, I mean, the defensive front was a position that I think a lot of fans were like, I don't really know. These guys going to be it, outside of Tulitu Pelotu, but he's leading the nation in sacks. This team is leading the nation in sacks, and Lincoln Riley harped it up to. It's not like we have 4 elite pass rushers just getting to the quarterback every time. It's a team effort. It's a team defense thing. A lot of those sacks are because there's coverage downfield, or that gives the defensive lineman more time to get up in there and bring them down. Same thing with interceptions. The defensive front, affecting the quarterback out of the pocket, making him make mistakes. So it goes both ways, and it's a team effort. It's not just one individual person. It's one of 11. If everyone's doing their job, you're going to lead the nation in sacks. If everyone's doing their job, hey, you're going to get turnovers. So that's what we're seeing in that product. And as you mentioned, Nick Figueroa, it looked like he was working with the rush end position a little bit interesting. He's coming off a really big game, 2-sack performance, 3.5 sacks on the season. He's had at least half a sack in his last 2 games. So Nick Figueroa starting to pick up, and I feel like they're just going to try to ride that pass rushing momentum, especially going up against a good quarterback like Cameron Rising.
Yeah, I did talk to Travis Dye for a while. Great soundbite. He's always fun to talk to. And asked him about, did you expect to get that many carries? 28 carries in the game. He did not. Were you tired at all? Could you take more carries? He said they definitely could. He said, they just prepare and get ready. So he seems to be embracing that role of the lead back, where he's just not even just the lead back. He's the only back. He's the guy that's out there doing things. And he talked to Kyle McDonald a little bit about, because Kyle McDonald, his position coach, coached at Utah, but he kind of joked and said, I played against them more than I know more about their defense than he does. So he was like, so it was kind of funny that he was doing that. But he seems to embrace this role of, you are the back, and if you're going to give me the ball 28 times, 35 times. He said he could do more. So 28's a lot, 149 yards and a touchdown. But I don't know, maybe we see more in this game if the run's working against Utah.
Homecoming for Kyle McDonald kind of slipped my mind, so he'll probably get a maybe not so warm reception, maybe until after the game. But as you said, the running back was an interesting position because going to the season, because they knew they had a lot of talented runners, and it seemed like it was going to be a committee approach unless somebody stepped up and just grabbed that mantle. Well, Ryan, Travis Dye has grabbed that mantle, as small as he is, and taking it by the shoulders.
No gloves to grab it.
No gloves to grab it. And he has been the clear-cut best running back on this team, one of the best running backs in this conference once again. So it makes sense they're going to keep pounding him and use him and his elusiveness and his ability to not go down on first contact and be able to pick up these clutch third downs. And that's what you want out of your running back. And I'm sure that they're going to be riding him again in a hostile environment, keep the ball on the ground, especially if that passing game is not quite working on the road. We'll have to see how that goes, but Travis Dye has been a consistent even when the offense has struggled in games.
Yeah, it's hard to get coaches to say something on the record that's like, ooh, that's kind of shocking. We're in the middle of the season. Kyle Whittingham this week, with a little shot maybe at the way USC's built their program with the transfer portal, NIL money and all that stuff. Wasn't quite that kind of moment with Lincoln Riley today, but he was asked about, improving the second half, the first 6 games going 6-0, and it was he had to kind of maybe back off a little bit, like, hey, that's not what I was talking about. But I thought that was kind of an interesting kind of quote. Maybe talk about what Lincoln Riley had to say there.
I don't know, Ryan. I think that is what he was talking about, but just in a cheeky way. He was asked, as you said, about what they need to do in the back half of the season and those final kind of 6 games, and he was like, just 6?
Yeah.
Kind of a wink to obviously a Pac-12.
They're already bowl eligible, so they're going to play more.
They're already bowl eligible, yes, but I think he had a little bit more, seeing a little bit farther into the future than perhaps a Alamo Bowl bid or something like that. A little bit more than that. It's a Pac-12 championship, maybe even more. And everyone kind of laughed about that. He said, "All right, everyone, calm down." That got a bigger laugh than the initial quote. But he's having fun with it. His team's 6-0, they're rolling. But he said this is kind of where the real fun starts. You put yourself in a great position, a great start at 6-0. Now you got to close out in the back half. There are a lot of 6-0 teams, he said. Some of them are not going to finish that well. Some of them are going to finish on a great note. They want to be one of those teams that finishes on a great note, and this is the point where you accelerate, pick up steam, and finish strong. That's what he wants to see out of this team. Whatever they did in the first half of the season doesn't matter. What happens? What matters now is how they handle the back half, and the back half is going to determine whether they play for a championship at the end of the season or make history of maybe being a 4-8 team that goes. Well, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it on record.
One of the things that was interesting, too, is he's talking about is a moving target. You're not always, it's not like this was good enough week 1. It's not going to be good enough week 3. It's not good enough for week 5. So you have to evolve as a team. So I thought that was interesting as well. Any sort of, I don't know if I hit every topic we want to talk about. Any final thoughts or any other topics I missed, Chris?
No, I think you pretty much hit everything. A couple standout plays defensively in practice. Obviously, Tuesday to today, we can see the scout offense run against the defense. Eric Gentry, Mekhi Blackman had really good practices, or in that portion, a couple pass breakups. The Mekhi Blackman had a really nice broken up pass on the sideline, and right before it went out of bounds, he caught it for an interception. Nice. Even in practice, this team is forcing turnovers, Ryan. So those are kind of the standouts from the scout team portion that I got to see. So Mekhi Blackman, pretty good day of practice.
Yeah, not bad. He's a pretty good day on the field, too. All right, well, that's going to wrap things up. Chris Trevino, as Jack likes to say. He pronounces it better than I do. How do you like it?
No, whatever he says, it doesn't matter. Trevino. Everyone's going to say it wrong at some point. So
nice. Well, for Chris, I'm Ryan. Make sure you check out USCFootball.com for everything we're doing going up to this game. It's a huge game. Chris will be there in Salt Lake City. I will be there. Shotguns flying in. Tons of content going up from practices and from our shows. We're going to do a live podcast a little bit later today, so you make sure you go check that out too. But for Chris, I'm Ryan. Make sure you check out USCFootball.com for more.